Alright, now to begin, Gaston Bachelard is the Poetics of Space. And the Poetics of Space and the connection between space and enclosed space and imagination. Now, when we talk about space, we often talk about things that are personal space, whether that be close proximities, whether that be long distance relationships, but most importantly, the space we create in between ourselves and between others. It's also a type of space that we create imagination. An example maybe could be how someone is far away. We imagine what this person is doing, what this person is up to. Maybe perhaps worrying about this person being far away because they're out of our eyesight, but also they're out of our proximity. We don't know exactly what they're up to. But there's also the space in between introverts. As an example would be an introvert or someone very close by, watching someone, observing them, and maybe reflecting on them and thinking of them as a certain way, as a type of art style. For example, someone who is, I don't know, maybe baking a pizza at a restaurant or something. By doing that, they can create a story or create some kind of dialogue in between this person to realize and think maybe what this person is up to. But looking at Gaston Bachelard's Poetics of Space, he makes some specific quotes, and the first one being, "With nest and above all shells, we find a whole series of images, and I'm going to try to characterize the primal images that bring out the primitiveness in us." Now, when he talks about shells and nests, that can be somewhere in the mind, because the shell and nest is typically a safe place. Whether that be an animal or something, is a hiding place, I guess you could say. A safe place we keep as humans is somewhere within our thoughts. What's more specifically in our minds. Because in our minds we keep certain thoughts and certain vulnerabilities away from everyone else. This could be a defense mechanism. This could be a natural habit to keep certain things away from people. But it's also a way that we keep our wild imagination free and safe and locked away from everyone else. Now, I know I said free and locked away at the same time, but free as in to roam in our own imagination, but locked away from everyone else, in a sense. Another example he gives is, "I shall then show that a human being likes to withdraw into his corner." Now, this is not just talking about shy people or introverts like myself, but to retreat and feel safe in a comfortable corner is what I guess you could say. Now, it's no big idea that someone would rather be comfortable than in misery or pain. Right? Now, retreating to a corner, it's probably naturally more safe because in a corner you are able to watch only one side, whereas your back is going to be against a wall or against some kind of barrier. But going back to introverts as well, a corner could also be a way as someone to recharge social batteries. Now, what I mean by this, extroverts are people who go and they want to be in the middle of the crowd. They want to be the center of attention. Whereas introverts, they want to be part of something, but they do not want to be the center of attention either. So when they socialize, it's kind of, they can only socialize for so long before they have to recharge the batteries. But as an introvert, this also means they desire to return to their own world of imagination. Now, imagination can take on different forms, whether that be you observing something, or whether you create a story of something, or whether that be maybe you create your own personal opinion of something. Nonetheless, someone who desires to be in their own corner and observing everything else, I think that's what he means by human beings like to withdraw into their own corner. Another quote he says is, "The point of departure of my reflection is the following. Every corner in a house, every angle in a room, every inch in a secluded space is in which we like to hide, or withdraw into ourselves, is a symbol of solitude for the imagination." Now, imagination, I guess the best way to break it down is imagination comes from solitude, because it's an enclosed space, and it's our own space. Now, by own space, I mean you have your personal space, whether that be you don't want someone to touch you, or you don't want someone to be this close when they talk to you. But It's our own enclosed space because it's something we feel comfortable with, but also too, something we're only allowing someone to be in close proximities with. Now, our own personal space and our own imagination and mind, it's also a place that only we can enter, no one else can enter. But also too, at the same time, sadly, we cannot exit it. No matter how much we want to exit, we cannot escape our own imagination, our own thoughts. Think of it more as our own pocket world, I guess you could say. If you've seen any sci-fi or any cartoon, you know about pocket worlds. It's basically a world that can exist within its own bigger plane. Like, I guess you could say a container. You can put something in there, and it's still within the proximity of the room, but it's in with its own little spot. Excuse me. Now, our imagination can work in the same way. Because in our own imagination, while it may be blocked off from the rest of the world, we have freedom to think and idealize in our own imagination. And what's more, it's our own personal space. Now, stepping away from Gaston Bachelard's Poetics of Space, the main idea I wanted to try to focus on was the I Wandered Lonely as a Cloud by William Wordsworth. Now, William's Wordsworth is not so much focused on secluded space, but more secluded on imagination, or more thinking on the idea of imagination. I wandered lonely as a cloud speaks, I wandered lonely as a cloud, repeat, that floats on high over vales and hills. Now, what he seems to be talking about is being in solitude and with his own enclosed space, as we mentioned earlier, but he is not lonely. Now, when he says lonely, that could slightly be a contradiction. Maybe he's being specific in his own terms, but I don't think he's talking about loneliness. I think more he's talking about solitude. Now, there is a difference between loneliness and solitude. Loneliness talks about whether you're being sadness because you're not near people, whereas solitude is being temporarily away from people with a desire of being alone, but always returning to someone. Now, when he says, I wandered as lonely as a cloud that floats on high over vales and hills, this means that he's observing and imagining things through observation. He's imagining himself as being a cloud and observing everything else around him. He's within his own enclosed space, whether that be the cloud above everything else, or whether that be a person in a crowd. That means he's observing something. But I guess another way you can put this is that he's like an artist sketching something. You've seen all the paintings where they have a bucket of fruit and they say, oh, I'm going to sketch this out, or I'm going to paint this out. That's similar to what he's being in his own thing. It's his own imagination and his own enclosed space that he's staying with, but he's also observing something. So I guess it could also be said that he is looking at something through a rearview mirror or maybe a glass. Alright, another thing he points out, or another quote he says is, for often when on my couch I lie, and in vacant or in a personal mood, or pensive mood, they flash upon the inward eyes, which is the bliss of solitude, and then my heart with pleasure fills, and dances with the daffodils. Okay, I'm reading this right now because it's a lot to remember. But anyway, I think what he is saying for here is that solitude, or being within your enclosed space, brings joy, even in the most mundane of times, because imagination can run wild. There is no limit to what your imagination can think. But also too, if your imagination can think it, maybe you can make it happen. But going more into the imagination thing, imagination can create wondrous and beautiful things, whether that be poetry, art, literature, or just these idealistic stories in our head or opinions that we have of someone. When he says that he is on the couch, maybe he's basically doing a normal, civil thing, but he's also imagining something. He's also dreaming of something like this. I guess where it comes down to is enclosed spaces or solitude can appear as loneliness. Yes, it may appear that, but there is a difference between loneliness and solitude. Loneliness, as I said earlier, can be sadness when you're not near people, whereas solitude means when you're temporarily away from people with the desire of being alone. By being quote-unquote alone or in solitude, and you're in enclosed space, Solitude can be in a room full of people with the use of imagination. You can be anywhere in any corner and still be in solitude. It would be like being at a party and no one notices you that they're there or not. But you're still thinking with your imagination, whether you be observing or creating your own ideas, opinions, and stories through your imagination. Because imagination can be a means of escape, it can be an inspiration, it can be art, or it can be a simple bliss, as what they said, I wandered lonely as a cloud. How he says that the crowd is like daffodils. Daffodils, we can say, are pretty beautiful things. But also too, when you observe them, a daffodil or something similar is only as beautiful as your imagination will allow it to be. So imagination is also special because it is our own idea and our own opinion. We make our own ideas and our own opinions in our own personal space or in enclosed space. I guess to bring it down is through connections between enclosed spaces and imagination. It's through imagination that when you're within a closed space, through your imagination, you can create many different things, many different ideas, opinions, arts, and so on and so forth.